I want to tell you about something that happened to me a few years ago. It's the kind of thing I've tried to forget, but every now and then, a sound, a shadow, or even just the way the wind moves through the trees brings it all rushing back. It was late autumn, the kind of season where the air smells like dying leaves and the nights feel too long. My best friend Luke had just inherited an old house from his grandmother. The place was way out in the middle of nowhere, perched on a hill surrounded by dense forest. It had been abandoned for years, left to rot after his grandmother passed away. Luke's plan was to fix it up and eventually sell it. He asked me to come along one weekend to help clean up the place. And I said yes. I wish I hadn't. The house was a two-story Victorian-style relic with peeling paint and shutters that hung crookedly on their hinges. The front porch creaked under our weight as we walked up to the door. A cold wind blew through the forest, rattling the bare branches like bones. "Creepy," I said, half joking. Luke laughed. "Yeah, but it'll look great once it's cleaned up. Just wait." But then he heard it. Inside, the house smelled like mildew and something faintly metallic, like old blood. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs stretched between the corners of the high ceilings. The furniture was still there, covered in white sheets like ghosts. The place felt wrong, like it had been waiting for someone to return. I tried to shake the feeling off, telling myself it was just an old house. We spent the day clearing debris, scrubbing walls, and patching holes. By sunset, we were exhausted. Luke set up a couple of sleeping bags in the living room because the bedrooms were too filthy. We lit a small fire in the old stone fireplace and sat around it, eating sandwiches and drinking cheap beer. That's when we heard it for the first time. It was faint at first, like a distant tapping. We both stopped talking and listened. The sound was coming from upstairs. "Probably just the wind," Luke said, though his voice lacked conviction. I nodded, not wanting to seem paranoid, but as the night went on, the noises got louder. Footsteps, unmistakably human, moving back and forth across the floor above us. Then came the dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the wooden planks. I looked at Luke, expecting him to laugh it off, but his face was pale. "We should check it out," he said. "Are you serious?" I asked. He grabbed a flashlight and handed me another. "If someone's in here, we need to know." I didn't argue. Together we climbed the creaking staircase. Every step seemed louder than the last, echoing in the oppressive silence. At the top, the hallway stretched out before us, lined with doors on either side. The air was colder up there, biting at my skin. "Which room?" I whispered. "The same as..." Luke pointed to the last door on the left. We approached slowly, the flashlight beams shaking slightly in our hands. Luke reached out and turned the knob. The door swung open with a groan, revealing a bedroom that looked untouched by time. The bed was made, the wallpaper was faded but intact, and a dusty porcelain doll sat on a shelf, staring at us with blank eyes. The room was empty. "See, nothing," Luke said, though he didn't sound relieved. As we turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind us. We both jumped, and Luke fumbled with the knob, but it wouldn't budge. Then came the laughter. A child's laughter, high-pitched and echoing as if it were coming from the walls themselves. My blood ran cold. "Let's get out of here," I shouted. Luke finally managed to open the door, and we bolted downstairs, not stopping until we were back by the fire. We didn't say anything for a long time. Eventually, we convinced ourselves it was just our imaginations, a combination of fatigue and the house's eerie atmosphere. We decided to stay the night anyway. Big mistake. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of whispering. It was so quiet at first that I thought it was part of a dream, but as I became more alert, I realized it was real. It sounded like a woman, her voice low and urgent. The words weren't in English, or at least not any language I recognized. I sat up and looked around. The fire had burned out, leaving the room in darkness. Luke was still asleep, his back to me. The whispering grew louder, closer. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a movement. Something was standing in the doorway to the kitchen. It was tall and thin. its outline barely visible in the faint moonlight filtering through the windows. I couldn't make out any features, just the shape of a person, impossibly still. My breath caught in my throat as it began to move toward me, slow and deliberate. I shook Luke awake. "There's someone in here," I hissed. He sat up groggily. "What are you talking about?" I pointed to the doorway, but the figure was gone. "I swear there was someone there," I said, my voice trembling. Luke looked uneasy but tried to reassure me. "Maybe you were dreaming." I didn't argue. I didn't want to seem crazy. But I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. She sent her lover. The next morning we found scratches on the living room floor. Long gouges that hadn't been there before. Luke tried to laugh it off, saying the wood was old and probably warped. I wasn't convinced, but I kept quiet. We spent the day boarding up broken windows and repairing parts of the roof. By evening, we were too tired to do much else. Luke suggested we check out the basement. "Why?" I asked, already dreading the idea. "I just want to make sure there's no water damage down there," he said. The basement door was in the kitchen, hidden behind a tall cabinet. The stairs were narrow and steep, leading into pitch blackness. The smell hit me first. Damp earth and rot. Luke went ahead with the flashlight, and I reluctantly followed. The basement was mostly empty. Just a few rusted tools and old boxes stacked against the walls. But in the far corner something caught my eye. A wooden door, small and unpainted, set into the stone foundation. "What do you think's in there?" Luke asked. "I don't think we should find out," I said. But Luke was already opening it. Behind the door was a small windowless room, no bigger than a closet. The walls were lined with strange symbols carved into the stone, circles and lines that seemed to shift and blur when I looked at them for too long. In the center of the room was a wooden chair, and on the chair sat a bundle of rags. Except it wasn't just rags. As Luke shone the flashlight on it, I saw the unmistakable shape of a skull peeking out from the folds of fabric. We both stumbled back, horrified. That's when the door slammed shut, plunging us into darkness. Luke's flashlight flickered and went out. "What the hell is happening?" I shouted. The whispering started again, louder this time, echoing off the walls. Then came the laughter, overlapping voices that sounded impossibly close. I felt something cold brush against my arm, and I screamed. Luke fumbled with the door, and after what felt like an eternity, it finally opened. We ran upstairs, slamming the basement door behind us. Neither of us said a word as we grabbed our bags and bolted for the car. As we sped down the dirt road, I glanced back at the house. For a moment, I thought I saw someone standing in the upstairs window, watching us leave. Luke sold the house a month later, but he never told the new owners about what we found. I've tried to forget about that weekend, to convince myself that it was just our imaginations playing tricks on us. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the laughter again, faint and far away. And I wonder if we left something behind in that house, or if something followed us home.